sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. So, gone yesterday. Well, I wasn't gone. Was preempted by the Frozen Four. Hell of a run by DU. I'll just say that. I mean, during the regular season, not a huge fan, but what they're able to do to get to the Frozen Four, pretty remarkable. And yesterday almost played out the exact same way. Dominated for 2 periods. Great goaltending, timely goal scoring, gets them to overtime. But the magic runs out, and so DU will not be going for another national championship coming up tomorrow. So that means got some lost time to make up for. 719-247-1313. Let's get into it here right off the top. So, one game into the David Adelman era. Tonight is game 2. Tonight, a much more important game. But first blush takeaways from what this Nuggets team looks like with no Michael Malone. And there are some, I think there are some noticeable differences, but small sample size. The thing that stuck out to me from that game was actually not anything that happened during the game. It was what happened after the game. Here's Nikola Jokic post-game.
I think they got Josh got the response that he wanted. People say that we are vulnerable, but I think the beast is always the strongest or the most dangerous when they're vulnerable. So maybe he woke up the beast.
That should send shivers down the spine of other Western Conference teams. That is one of the hardest lines I have heard Nikola Jokic or any athlete drop. But notice when he said it, he was talking about Josh. He wasn't talking about the NBA. He wasn't talking about the media. Because, look, the Nuggets were a team that was already losing favor with the national media. Heck, the local media. Right? People were jumping off the bandwagon. People were looking around trying to find other teams to point at as who could take down Oklahoma City, right? That's how we viewed most of this season, the prism we've viewed it through. Who can knock off OKC? Hasn't been the Nuggets for a while. And it now, certainly after firing Michael Malone with 3 games left in the regular season, no one is backing the Denver Nuggets. In fact, it's the opposite. The Nuggets are now becoming the most vulnerable team in the first round. But it wasn't the media. Nikola Jokic wasn't taking a page out of Michael Malone's book and saying, everyone on the outside, you guys don't believe in us. And you've awoken the beast. He was talking about Josh. And we can't forget in all of this. Yes, ultimately, Booth and Michael Malone are being held responsible for what has gone on with the Denver Nuggets. And rightly so. But we can't lose sight of the fact that this whole thing, Josh Kroenke doing what he did a few days ago, is also a referendum on the team. Because Josh Kroenke can say it till he's blue in the face about the goal still being winning a title. If you thought the team, as currently constructed, could win a title, then you just keep Michael Malone. You don't throw off the rhythm or whatever you want to call it of this team by jettisoning your coach with 3 games left. To me, I think that a lot of the takes out there are correct. You cannot truly, deep down, believe that the Denver Nuggets, after making this move, are suddenly going to get everything right and go out and win a title. That can't be the thought. If it happens, great. Like, I talked about it in the wake of Michael Malone getting fired. Look, the downside is minimal, right? Given where you thought the Nuggets were in the pecking order of the Western Conference, the way things were going, it really can't get much worse. So you cross your fingers and you hope, well, maybe this does spur them on further than they were going to go. But you don't make this kind of a move, even if you are fed up with Michael Malone. You don't make this move if you truly believe that you can win a title this year. I'm sorry, I can't get behind that logic. And what's part of the reason why somebody would say the Nuggets aren't able to win a title this year? Their team, the players. This team right now is not good enough. So when Nikola Jokic talks about waking up the beast, he's not talking about the rest of the Western Conference. He's not talking about the media. He's acknowledging the message that Josh Kroenke is sending to the team. You aren't playing good enough. And in some way, you're not good enough. You know, Nikola Jokic said after the game as well that it was not an open conversation. He did know before anybody else did. But he didn't characterize it as a conversation. He was presented with their decision and he accepted it. Pretty much backs up everything that you and I have discussed throughout the week. That there's no way Nikola Jokic isn't tipped off about this. And Nikola Jokic still, if he wanted to, could have put a stop to it. Could have. He didn't want to. Because he acknowledged that the way things were going, it was untenable. And we'll get into that because there's been reporting from The Athletic and ESPN and the Denver Post about what all went into this. So, yeah, Nikola Jokic didn't campaign for Michael Malone to get fired. He was alerted before everybody, and I still believe that Nikola Jokic knows that if any part of him or most of him objected to the decision, he could have said something. He could have saved Michael Malone. But he chose not to, which should say something, by the way, for the people who still think that the Denver Nuggets are completely wrong for firing Michael Malone. But when you make this kind of a move, it is a message to everyone. Like Josh can still, sculpt it and craft it so it just seems like we're going in with the scalpel and we're just taking out the bad parts, and that's Booth and Malone, and everything else is fine. And I think Nikola Jokic is smart enough to know that that's really not the case. There are deficiencies on this team. The defense, the three-point shooting, we don't need to go over and over again. But this team wasn't looking good. If you knew nothing about the toxicity behind the scenes between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, you would just say this team's not good enough. And Nikola Jokic is saying, we hear you. We understand what this means. that in some way, some part of this is thinking that the Denver Nuggets aren't good enough to win a title or aren't going to. Maybe that's the better way to put it. They're not going to. So this is Nikola Jokic saying we understand what this is saying. So already, even as down as people are on the Denver Nuggets, you still really don't want to see Nikola Jokic if you can help it. But this, I think, has to make the Nuggets one of the least desirable first-round matchups, if they weren't already. To hear the game's best player say something like that, yeah, I don't want to see this guy. I want to see this guy later rather than sooner. I don't want to see him. Let him be somebody else's problem. But what I saw during the game, and in David Adelman, I almost call him Rick, what I saw David Adelman do, and he's said as much, he wants the players to handle a lot of this. Christian Brown said the communication was better in that game than it had ever been because so often they would be looking to Michael Malone to tell them what to do. What this now becomes for the Denver Nuggets is very much player-led. And it's Nikola Jokic's comments, but it's also what you saw on the bench. Nikola Jokic drawing up plays. It's what you saw on the court. It's what you saw was David Adelman in the whole Pickett versus Westbrook dynamic that was emerged in that game. David Adelman, whether this is his idea or whether this is coming from Josh Kroenke, what happens from here on out is on the players. The other variables have been removed. It is on the Nuggets players to elevate their game, to elevate each other, to produce, to come together to try and win a title. Because there are no other scapegoats. And at least not yet. If we take the players as a collective, I should say, there will be scapegoats within that group of players. But if you look at it, owner, GM, coach, players, from here on out is on the players. It's not right. They have to fix it. And that's what David Adelman allowed this team to do. You could make jokes that Nikola Jokic is now coaching the team. I don't think that's that far-fetched. Not that he will become the coach, but just the idea that their leader, their best player, is taking the reins, maybe more than he has in the past, of being a leader. And David Adelman said, I want them to speak up. I want them to say things. Well, you saw a very talkative bunch against Sacramento, and I would expect the same thing tonight against Memphis. But this is on the Denver Nuggets players. Whatever they do from here on out, is going to be because of them. Either because truly they're not, as currently constructed, a good enough team, or they were truly being weighed down by the dynamic between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone. David Adelman's not going to be out here trying to win this job by showcasing his X's and O's acumen. He's going to very much take a step back and allow the players to lead the way here. And I think that makes, if it already wasn't going to be fascinating, because it already was, it's going to be even more so, because you know that the players are going to be, in a way, policing themselves, coaching themselves, communicating with each other. And David Adelman's just going to make sure that everybody's getting a breather every once in a while. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on what you saw the first game without Michael Malone. Of course, that one was in many ways just kind of an appetizer, because tonight is a far more significant game. We'll get into all the machinations and what's on the line for the Denver Nuggets tonight. Coming up next, why it would take something quite remarkable, right, to bump Nuggets Grizzlies off of the top tier of what you want to watch tonight. But I think we have one of those circumstances up in Loveland. It's happening, and we'll get to it next. Tom Segura is bringing his Come Together tour to Colorado Springs on Sunday, November 9th. Tickets on sale now. Available online at axs.com or in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. Well, it's happening. Tonight, Gabriel Landeskog will play in a professional hockey game, albeit at the AHL level. Funny that we don't have more of these. Like in baseball, you hear about rehab starts like all the time. I think obviously the Gabriel Landeskog return has a whole nother level to it, but it's like you never see a lot of NHL guys stopping off at the AHL affiliate to get right before they're back into the lineup. But tonight in Loveland, Gabriel Landeskog will play for the Colorado Eagles. And you will be able to watch it because I know you're thinking the same thing I am. Like, is this going to be like Wilt's 100-point game? Like, we're only going to get pictures, or are we going to be able to see this thing? Well, apparently you can watch it for free. The AHL has a Facebook page, because of course they do. They're going to be streaming the game. And Flow Hockey, which I believe does a lot of stuff, I think that's where you watch the Air Force games, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, Flow Hockey has a YouTube page, and you can watch it on there as well. So you better believe I'll be double screening it tonight with that, and then also the Nuggets and Grizzlies, which also starts at 7 o'clock. But look, with Gabriel Landeskog, it's always the normal caveat. If this goes well, then I was talking to somebody who was asking me about whether Gabriel Landeskog was going to play or not, because they were looking into getting tickets. And I said, it's with Gabriel Landeskog, it's always if the next step goes okay. And the next step before playing tonight was morning skate. And that's the way it's always been. And that's the way it's going to continue to be even at this late stage of his comeback. You're just going to be taking it one step at a time. He goes down for the conditioning assignment. Practices with the team. That went okay. All right. Now it's morning skate. That goes okay. All right. He's playing. And then the next step is obviously next week, him rejoining the Colorado Avalanche and getting prepared to take the ice in Dallas either a week from tomorrow or a week from Sunday. But that tonight will determine that. This is not if we've learned anything throughout this process with Gabriel Landeskog, nothing is a formality. Nothing can be taken for granted. This is, to steal a phrase from former Nuggets GM Tim Connolly, there is no skipping steps here. This is the next step, and it continues to be closer than Gabriel Landeskog has been in the last 3 years to rejoining and playing games for the Colorado Avalanche. But tonight is it's that last big hurdle, right? Like, he's not going to be going up against the best players in the world, but there are going to be some players there that are looking to make a name for themselves. And here's a chance, all eyes on this game, all eyes on Gabriel Landeskog. Not to say anyone's going to take a run at him, but there are going to be a lot of guys both on the Eagles and on the opposing team tonight that are going to be playing as hard as they've ever played in their lives. And we'll see how Gabriel Landeskog is, the pace of the game, the skill set. We'll look at all of this stuff. Again, I don't expect to be wowed by Gabriel Landeskog. I don't expect to be wowed by Gabriel Landeskog at all. even when he rejoins, if he rejoins the Colorado Avalanche. My expectations for what he's going to be as a player are very low. And I'm not saying that to diminish Gabriel Landeskog. I think that that's best. The story here is him returning, him getting back out on the ice. Chris McFarland has done enough with the Colorado Avalanche roster that they shouldn't need Gabriel Landeskog to win a Stanley Cup. Right? Not that Gabriel Landeskog has undertook all this to be selfish and to make it all about him, because he's not that kind of a guy. But his return is very much about him. And that's why I say he needs to be on a lower line. He needs to get limited minutes. If the best thing that the Avalanche take from having Gabriel Landeskog back is just the vibes, then awesome, then great. But the Avalanche run through the Stanley Cup playoffs is not going to be determined by Gabriel Landeskog's availability or even his production. Okay, it's about the play of Mackenzie Blackwood. It's about Valeri Nichushkin making sure that he doesn't disappear, literally, before a game 6 of the first round. Right? When you go down the pecking order of what the Avalanche need to go right in order to win a Stanley Cup, Gabriel Landeskog should be very far down on that list. And if he is high up on that list, then that's a problem. And that means that you don't think that the Avalanche are good enough to win a cup. They should be good enough to win a cup without him. So all this, to me, it's for Gabriel Landeskog to see all of this hard work pay off. And for the Avalanche, an emotional boost is all they should ask of him. And I don't even want to go further than that, but I suppose I will. If he shows that he's capable of more than just being an emotional boost to the team, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But this is far more about the Landeskog story than it is about the Colorado Avalanche and their pursuit of a Stanley Cup. But it quickly but that doesn't mean that Landeskog's return is the most important thing. It's just the more timely thing. Next week is when it will be Avs, Stars, handicapping it, breaking it down. What do the Avs need to do to win that 7-game series? And Gabriel Landeskog is going to be mentioned by me and others, but in only small portions. It's just we're at the time of the year here where, and the Avalanche did this last night by saying Nathan McKinnon's not going to play anymore this season, is saying don't even bother watching the Avs over the last 3 games. And given the way they played last night against Vancouver, I wish I would have heeded their advice. These last 3 games mean nothing. Focus on Gabe. Game 1 will be a lot of stuff. It will be the intersection of the Gabriel Landeskog story and the Avs' pursuit of a Stanley Cup. But once that puck is dropped, Game 1 in Dallas, it's got to be about the Avs and what's best for them, not what's best for Gabriel Landeskog. Him being on the ice for Game 1 is finishing that arc. And then Jared Bednar's got to be about, okay, what combinations, what personnel can give me the best chance of beating the Stars and advancing in this Stanley Cup playoff. But since the Avs have obliged and say, don't worry watching us, watch the Eagles instead, that's indeed what we will focus on. Just after 7 o'clock tonight, again, AHL Facebook page or Flow Hockey's YouTube is where you can go to watch Gabriel Landeskog play his first professional hockey game in 3 years. Take your thoughts on Gabe, your excitement level for tonight. 719-247-1313. I have more on the Avs in a little bit. The consequence of Nathan MacKinnon not playing the last 3 games of the season as it pertains to the Hart Trophy. But coming up next, an early name has emerged for the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. And right out of the gate, I got to say, I don't see this one. We'll talk about it next here on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to interact with the show. Got a couple of texts in, one on the Nuggets. Yes, the post-Malone era. Man, that joke got worn out as quickly as it arrived, did it not? And also Gabriel Landeskog from the 719. I like Jokic grabbing the clipboard and helping coach Jokic. I liked it too. The real question is, does it help his MVP case? That's really what we need to know. Could this be a very elaborate way of trying to get Jokic over the finish line as the MVP? Because I don't see Shea coaching the Thunder. But I think what this is, and David Adelman could win the job this way, right? To just kind of step aside, because all the reporting that's coming out is that Michael Malone inserted his own feelings very much into things. Why? Was obstructionist towards Calvin Booth's vision, adversarial. If Josh Kroenke overall likes this roster and David Adelman just kind of takes a step back and allows the players to take more ownership of what's going on, Josh could look at that and go, yeah, that's the kind of mentality I want. I like this roster. I like the leaders of this team having more say instead of, as Christian Brown put it the other night, them looking over at Michael Malone for what they should do. Take some ownership. Make this run from here on out about you guys. If you think you're good enough to win a title, take more ownership into this and go win a title. Let Adelman kind of just keep the train on the rails. Right? And that train I'm obviously referring to is Russell Westbrook. And then the Landeskog sentiment. Landeskog will take whatever he has. It'll help. I think that's right. And I'm just saying I don't think it's a lot. And Jared Bednar needs to frame it that way. He needs to be like, okay, we're bringing this guy back. We've waited and doing all of this stuff, and we're going to put him back out on the ice when he's ready. But that doesn't mean he's going to be playing major minutes. It doesn't mean he's going to be on the top line. It doesn't mean that you're going to see a ton of Gabriel Landeskog. He's got to, once he joins the team, he's got to earn that. And I think that's just the balance here. We're all for the Gabriel Landeskog comeback story, and it can help the Colorado Avalanche. But we're embarking on the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're embarking on the most difficult road to win a title in all of sports. The feel-good stories take a back seat. And it's about who needs to be on the ice in order to help the Avalanche win. And I think, a healthy level of skepticism that Gabriel Landeskog at this juncture is a player that needs to be on the ice a lot. But back to the Denver Nuggets. And I'll keep taking your thoughts at 719-247-1313. A name has emerged, one of many. But I think already we're kind of 0 for 1. And I brought this name up before, but it's Dan Hurley. There have been some rumblings that Dan Hurley is interested in this job, and the Nuggets plan to talk to him. I will apply the same logic for this as I did the Laker job. The sense that I get is that Dan Hurley very much likes his name out there. I thought this with the Laker job. I didn't think that Dan Hurley was really that serious about taking over the job. Now, in retrospect, if he knew that Luka was going to be handed over to the Lakers, maybe he would have been a bit more serious about it. But Dan Hurley has quickly become a media, there's a word I want to use, but it's a family show. He likes the spotlight. That's how I will put it. He likes going on talk shows. He likes to be talked about on SportsCenter. And look, if anybody would ever talk about me in the way, like, I probably would be kind of the same way Dan Hurley is. Okay, so I'm not putting him down for that. I'm just saying, where is his real motivation here? Does he really want to leave UConn to take an NBA job? And you look at this job as compared to the Laker job, especially the timing of it now with UConn being dethroned this year. That was another aspect of the Laker job. I just don't understand why you leave a program that you have won back-to-back titles with the chance to three-peat to take that job. Again, no Luka. No Luka. Remember what that job was before Luka got there. Okay, that was a team that was going nowhere. I never bought into the idea that Dan Hurley was really serious about taking over that job. And I still would have that a decent level of skepticism around him truly wanting the Nuggets job. But I will say this. The Nuggets job is better than the Laker job. If you're just looking from a basketball perspective, what the Nuggets job is going to be this summer, as opposed to what the Laker job was last summer, this is a better gig. Right? And you not only have, if we're just boiling this down to star versus star, you have a better player right now in Nikola Jokic than LeBron is. And you have the lowest maintenance superstar in the NBA versus the highest maintenance superstar in the NBA. Okay, so if you just want to boil it down to LeBron versus Jokic, that's a check mark on the Jokic column. But you look at the roster as a whole, yeah, they were both flawed. This Nuggets roster is flawed. It's better than the Lakers roster was going into this season. So perhaps Dan Hurley has more interest in this job than he did the Laker job. But I think his main objective is just being in the news cycle. I think that's a win for him. That being said, whatever Dan Hurley's motivation is, I don't think he's the right fit for Denver. And it goes beyond experience, right? And I said that's something that I really value in this Nuggets coaching search. I really think that if there's a good candidate available, they need to grab one with NBA head coaching experience. I really do. Dan Hurley doesn't have that. So that's already a mark on him. But I think I'll add, if we're creating the ideal Nuggets candidate, We'll start with NBA head coaching experience, preferably at a successful stint as an NBA head coach. But then I think there's a temperament that is required here. And it's a temperament that Dan Hurley does not have. Part of the Michael Malone story is that he just flat out rode this team too hard. If you want to go to the level of superstars are babied and professional athletes are big babies, go right ahead. But the fact of the matter is that the Denver Nuggets at this stage don't need somebody to get on them. And that has been made very clear and reiterated with all of these pieces that have come out in the last couple of days about the Nuggets situation. Yes, it starts with Malone and Booth, but it also extends to Malone and the players. That Michael Malone just never changed it up. He was still the same way this whole time. He was the same way through the years where they were trying to build towards making the playoffs, then when they were building towards winning a title, and he's kept the same, it stayed in the same gear the whole time. And that's why there are coaches that are best to take over rebuilding teams, and there are coaches that are best to take over teams that are ready to win. It's a different gear you need to be in, and that has become clear that the Nuggets don't need somebody to constantly be on them. And Michael Malone was. And because Dan Hurley likes to be in the public square so often, we know what a Dan Hurley practice is. We know what a Dan Hurley game looks like. Does that seem like the right replacement for Michael Malone? And I'm not saying that Dan Hurley doesn't have some wiggle room, right? If you're a good coach, even when going from college to the pros, you should be able to a degree understand that you're working with grown men now. But that still doesn't lead to a lot of success for coaches coming from college to the NBA. Dan Hurley can maybe soften it around the edges a little bit, but he's kind of a maniac. And he's just always going to be that way. And that is not what the Nuggets need right now. And I just don't think that the Nuggets, that the coaching position is as important as the GM. I really think that there are more flaws with this roster than there are with the mentality or the want to or the coachability. Or I think more of the burden falls on whoever takes over for Calvin Booth than who takes over for Michael Malone. Not to say that head coach doesn't matter, but if you're bringing in Dan Hurley, you're bringing him in to kind of be everything, to take control of this organization. And I don't know that that's best. So we'll see if the Nuggets, I mean, for what it's worth, if I'm the Nuggets, I talk to the guy, right? I have no problem with the Nuggets showing some level of interest and just sitting down with him and seeing what his thoughts are. But if I'm crafting an ideal candidate to take over the Denver Nuggets, somebody that burns as hot as Dan Hurley is not somebody I'd be looking for. And then you throw on top of it the fact that he would be going. It's one thing to be taking over the Los Angeles Lakers, who have no clear plan after LeBron James. It's another thing to take over a team that is expecting to compete in NBA Finals this coming up year and years to come. So if this Dan Hurley stuff is real, I take the meeting if I'm the Nuggets. I talk to him if I'm the Nuggets, but he is not what I'm looking for ultimately. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Would you be interested in Dan Hurley for the Nuggets job? We'll take a break, come back, talk about the consequence of tonight's game for the David Adelman-led Nuggets against the Memphis Grizzlies. In the meantime, here's another Masters update from Westwood One. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports on this Friday. Ryan Kaufman with you. If you're watching the show today on our social media platforms, I don't know if it comes through. I think you could tell. I think you can. It's pretty noticeable, but certainly walking the hallways today, I've gotten some looks. So yesterday, no show because of the Frozen Four. So I'm going to go to my son's track meet. And I'll just say this between us. If you are a track parent, I pity you. I do. That is the most, to sit through 5 or 6 hours of kids that aren't yours to get to like 5 good minutes of my kid competing. That is not a day well spent. Now, I won't say this to him. And look, I'm glad I went, and I'm glad I got to watch my son, compete in track. But my God, that is, it's hell on earth. Like I just have to put it as bluntly as I can. I very much hope that this is a sport that he eventually moves away from. So I say all that to say that I did not properly protect myself against the sun. And it always happens every year. If you are fair-skinned like I am, and maybe with a little bit of regard for your own self, you'll know that the first day where it's very warm and sunny, you don't protect yourself the way you should. You learn a lesson, and for the rest of the spring and summer, you take the proper precautions. I did not take the proper precautions, and I'm paying the price. So, yeah, Will Red today. Hopefully, it doesn't take away from your viewing experience too much. I do think the lights are a little bit dimmer in here, so it's not as stark. But anyway, it'll be better on Monday. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to interact about things that are not my sunburn. Nuggets tonight, and I said this the other day, the Sacramento game is important for some reasons, but really the game the Nuggets have to get is tonight. And given what has played out in the NBA over the last 48 hours, that has come to fruition. This is the game that the Nuggets must have if they're going to avoid the play-in, or if they're going to do their part to avoid the play-in. Here are the other teams that they would have to rely on if they don't take care of business tonight against Memphis. They would have to rely on Brooklyn. They would have to rely on Sacramento. They would have to rely on Portland and a Houston. Well, we'll save the Lakers conversation. So Brooklyn, Sacramento, and Portland. If the Nuggets can't beat Memphis, those are the teams that they're going to have to be relying on to help them out to keep them from sliding into the play-in. Those are not teams that the Nuggets should expect help from. So they should win tonight if they can help it. If the Nuggets win tonight, then it's a different conversation. You're more looking at, well, what about the Lakers and the 3 seed? Well, that will come down to its last day. And again, you're relying on Portland. So mathematically, it's still a possibility. And we saw in game 81 last year with the Denver Nuggets, look, anything is possible. Kevin Garnett voice. But it's looking like the Nuggets are going to be somewhere between 4 and 8. And that's what the expectation should be. So you win tonight, you stay in 4th. That's the important thing. And then if some of this other help comes your way, then you have a little bit of cushion for Sunday's game against Houston, which is a Houston team, by the way, that really at this stage of the season has nothing to play for. But the consequence of tonight could be dire. So in that way, the timing of Michael Malone's firing, if you're going to do it before the end of the season, then it was probably good to get one game of the David Adelman era under your belt before you got into a very important game, which is the one tonight. Now, as far as who the Nuggets will play, we kind of forgot about the LA Clippers. And there were reasons for that. If you check out what the Clippers are doing right now, which would be the matchup if the season ended today, and is a very possible matchup for the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Don't love it. Don't love it. Clippers have won 6 in a row. They are one of the best teams in the NBA since they took the minutes restriction off of Kawhi Leonard, and that was the whole thing of it, right? Kawhi Leonard, we don't know if he's going to play, when he's going to play, if he's going to get hurt again. Well, he's been playing, and he hasn't been hampered by a minutes restriction, and he's playing great. So now the Clippers are, in effect, a very different team than they have been for much of this season. They're a good three-point shooting team, which is bad for the Denver Nuggets. And they're a very good defensive team, especially adding Kawhi Leonard back to the mix, which is also an especially bad piece of information for the Denver Nuggets. So if we're doing the thing where we're talking about the most advantageous matchup, I look at the Warriors. I still think Golden State, despite what happened late last week, is still the better matchup for Denver. If you given me the opportunity to pick the Clippers or the Warriors, I'm taking the Warriors. And it's because despite what happened late last week, the Nuggets have proven to be a very tough matchup for Golden State. They have no one that can they don't even have a Zubac to defend Nikola Jokic. They have no one. So I still think that the Nuggets are not a good matchup for Golden State. So if you gave me the choice, I'm saying the preferred opponent would be Golden State over LA. But I don't think that either would necessarily spell first round exit for the Denver Nuggets. As significant of a development as Kawhi Leonard's return to full strength for the LA Clippers has been, their second best player is still James Harden. Right? So you could tell me about Kawhi Leonard all you want, and yeah, going in a 7-game series against that dude, if he's right, is scary. Not so worried about the other guy. So there's a lot of things in this matchup, potentially with LA, that the Nuggets will have to really work hard to negate. But longer the series goes on, playoff James Harden becomes more of a factor. I think I would still take Denver over LA and over Golden State from a matchup perspective. Because we still don't know how the firing of Michael Malone is going to manifest itself. Are we going to see signs of a team in disarray? And I'm just talking for the first round. Because where the Nuggets are heading, they're getting OKC in round 2. I'm just talking about round 1, and I'm saying Golden State would be preferable over LA. I still would lean Denver in either matchup. But the entire thing about the Denver Nuggets in the postseason is about Jamal Murray. Right? Forget for a moment the impact of firing Michael Malone, good or bad. That's not even going to matter as much if Jamal Murray isn't healthy. If Jamal Murray's not healthy, then why is there any reason to expect a series between Denver and Golden State to end any other way than it did the last time those two teams met in the playoffs? No Jamal Murray, Steph Curry wins sleepy night-night. The Nuggets have to have Jamal Murray, and then we can talk about the impact of firing Michael Malone. To me, it's as simple as that. If Jamal Murray's not healthy, this team could be bounced in the first round by anybody in the West. But if they have Jamal Murray and he's healthy, then that's where I see them making it out of the first round. And then, best of luck against Oklahoma City in the second round. And there is some news on the Jamal Murray front. He has been upgraded to questionable for tonight's game. And I think there's a practical reason for this, and Katie Winge perfectly stated it on social media today, that normally when you see a move like this, the idea is to have a player go through warm-ups. And then if they're ready to go, then they play. If their injury doesn't respond, then they don't. But given the consequence of this game, if Jamal Murray is at least good to go out there and try in warm-ups, then you could really use him. Whether they have him or not, they got to win this game. But if you can get him back, even in some kind of limited capacity, I don't think that hurts you. So Jamal Murray upgraded to questionable for tonight. By the way, if he plays tonight or on Sunday, it'd be the most games that he has played in a season in the last 5 years. Right now, he's tied at 65. If he plays one more game, it would be the most games that he's played in. It's still not a significant number, but it's more than he's played in the past. But you got to win. You got to win it. And if Jamal Murray is available, I think now it gives David Adelman all the reason in the world to just go with Jalen Pickett. Right? If Jamal Murray's not playing, you got to play Westbrook and Jalen Pickett. Just as a matter of practicality. You have to play both of them. And perhaps outside of Nikola Jokic, coaching the team in timeouts and the communication that Christian Brown discussed that was better than it had been in any game this season, the biggest takeaway I have from the Sacramento game is that one of the players that was being most hurt by Michael Malone was Jalen Pickett. That guy played like a weight had been lifted off of his shoulders. And ESPN's, and I'll get more into the ESPN piece in the next segment, but one of the things that ESPN pointed out were Zeke Naji and Jalen Pickett kind of being representative of the blood feud between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. And I'm not expecting the Jalen Pickett that played against Sacramento to just be him moving forward, but you could certainly tell that Jalen Pickett felt a little bit more free to play. And as that game wore on, I just kept thinking there's less and less reason to have Russell Westbrook out there. And I kind of, part of this playoff run that the Denver Nuggets are about to go on, I really do hope that Jalen Pickett is more prominent than Russell Westbrook. And I do hope that Peyton Watson gets to play throughout the playoffs instead of playing in the first round and not in the second round. And I'm coming at it from the mindset of this is about roster evaluation. Okay, you got the fight between Malone and Booth gone. It seems like Adelman is going to be able to balance things a little bit better between the young guys and still trying to win basketball games. But I want to see Peyton Watson. I want to see Jalen Pickett. I want to know because I am entirely being a prisoner of the moment, but we only have one moment so far. Right? So that's all we have to go on. I have a feeling that while we won't be at the end of this saying that Calvin Booth was 100% right, I think we're going to be saying Calvin Booth wasn't as wrong as we have made him out to be. That these young players do have something to offer. It's not going to be the difference between the Nuggets winning a title or not. But because of Michael Malone's stubbornness or not even stubbornness, complete unwillingness to give these guys a fair shake, we've never seen what their potential is. And I hope that part of this, and I'm, again, coming at it from a place where I don't think the Nuggets are winning a title one way or another. I want to know. And Jalen Pickett, without Michael Malone, game one, was much better than Russell Westbrook. So if Jamal Murray plays DNP CD for Russell Westbrook, I don't think would be necessarily a bad thing. If he doesn't, then you got to play both of them. Let's just lean more towards Jalen Pickett, given what we saw the other night. Reward him for being one of the most important players in that win the other night. 719-247-1313. You can hear Grizzlies Nuggets, by the way, right here on Extra Sports 1300. Sticking with that, Ramona Shelburne, Tim McMahon came out with the latest in a series of pieces from all different types of media outlets diagnosing what exactly happened with the Denver Nuggets. I have a few takeaways from it that I'll share with you next on Extra Sports 1300. Comedian Tom Segura is bringing his Come Together tour to Colorado Springs on November 9th. However, tickets on sale right now, axs.com, or you can stop by the Pikes Peak Center box office and pick them up the old-fashioned way. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. Jersey J checking in with a few different thoughts. One that I want to get to for obvious reasons. First, Ryan, you've been saying it all season with the Nuggets that they're not good enough. Now I believe you. Not only is that a very self-serving reason that I'm texting it, but it leads directly into what I want to discuss right now. Yes, I don't believe that this team has been good enough for much of the season to win a title. But with the dynamic between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone, and it's part of Josh Kroenke's calculus in doing this, I don't think we've seen truly what this team is capable of. Good or bad. It might still be bad. It might be worse. Who knows? But I'm just saying we haven't actually gotten what this Nuggets team is supposed to be because Calvin Booth and Michael Malone have been bickering back and forth. And that's, as we start to parse out the blame and all this kind of stuff, yes, I think that Calvin Booth made some missteps, right? Did some things on this roster that made them worse. And the perfect example of that is letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go. But we can't forget, it's ultimately his decision, but who's he acting on behalf of? When I hear that a team is getting rid of somebody to stay under one of these aprons, that's ownership. So we can't forget that when it's a payroll thing, that the general manager can either be acting on behalf of what he thinks the owners want or under direct orders. So KCP walking, yes, ultimately that's Calvin Booth's job, and that is put on his ledger that he let that happen. But what was the motivation behind it? Did he really believe that this team could be just as good without KCP and putting Christian Brown in the lineup? Or did he say, given that I know he didn't say this, but in his mind, he's like, given that I know that the Kroenkes are not going to want to spend into the second apron, do I have to make do with this? And we may never know, because I don't know if Booth's ever going to speak out about this. I don't know if Calvin Booth's going to get another GM gig. We may never hear from this guy again. Michael Malone will hear from again. But yes, I think Calvin Booth made some missteps with this roster. But isn't it on Michael Malone to make it work? And I think that's where a lot of the blame falls on Michael Malone. And you read the ESPN piece that came out today with Tim McMahon and Ramona Shelburne, or The Athletic, or even Bennett Durando's reporting in the Denver Post. It paints a picture of not only Michael Malone, not completely buying in to Calvin Booth's vision, but being a very active barrier to it. With Jalen Pickett and with Zeke Naji in particular. Calvin Booth thinks that Zeke Naji is a 4. Michael Malone refuses to play him there. Now, what reason could there be? If the guy that's picking the player, right? Because there has to be a trust. And Bob Myers pointed out something the other day on ESPN, clearly campaigning for the Nuggets general manager job, saying that the relationship between GM and coach is actually built to fail. Right? Because one's looking at the day-to-day, one's looking at the long-term. And it's incumbent upon both parties to make it work, to find a middle ground. And I think what we saw is there was no middle ground. Right? The vision is play Zeke Naji at the 4. And Michael Malone's like, no. Why? Because Michael Malone thinks he's better at the 5? No. Well, what other reason could there be? Then some light sabotage. So he can go, see, this dude stinks. We put him at the backup 5, and I got to put DeAndre Jordan in instead. Something that good coaches do is put their players in positions to succeed. You hear it all the time. Has Michael Malone put Zeke Naji in a position to succeed? Whatever succeeding looks like. And that, again, that's my point here. I don't think we actually saw the way that saw the team that we were supposed to see all year. Because Michael Malone was such an impediment to it. Right? Jalen Pickett's another. No, Michael Malone wants to play Russell Westbrook all the time. But it goes back, like the only young player on this roster that Michael Malone has seemed to ever have any faith in is Christian Brown. And I don't know if any of these other guys actually deserve more. And that's the thing. I don't know for sure if any of these young guys are any good or that Michael Malone just doesn't want to play them. And that's where it comes in where, you know what, you both got to go. I think the bigger issue is the roster. That ultimately falls on Calvin Booth. So he could take more of the blame than Michael Malone. But everything that has come out is saying that Michael Malone wasn't even willing to see the vision. There was no compromise. Calvin Booth put together a team that he thought he should, and then Michael Malone wouldn't try to make it work. And that's what you can't have if you're Josh Kroenke. You can't have a coach that intentionally plays guys out of position or consistently picks one guy or another, just does not buy in at any level to what Calvin Booth is trying to do. It has to be a compromise. And there was no compromise between the two of them. So then they bickered back and forth. And everything would basically came down to, are you team Booth or are you team Malone? And that creates a toxic environment. So that's a little of what Josh Kroenke is banking on here. That David Adelman is a little bit less headstrong when it comes to some of the roles and rotations and some of the players that he's playing in the minutes. And now we'll get to actually see more of what these young players are capable of. And by extension, more of what the Nuggets are capable of. I think of these young players, you can unequivocally say that Christian Brown has been a success and Zeke Naji has been a failure. I don't know that consistently playing Zeke Naji at the 4 is ultimately going to make him a great player. And they gave him the extension, which was probably actually the bigger problem with Zeke Naji, was the extension that he received that made him untradeable. But the more I read coming out of Denver and just going over some of my own thoughts I've had throughout the year, it just seems like Michael Malone was such an impediment to what the guy that was put in charge of the long-term vision of this team had. So I just don't think that we've actually seen what this Nuggets team is supposed to be. And maybe we'll see more of it. And we may very well come out on the other end of these playoffs and go, yeah, that wasn't good enough either. Jalen Pickett as the backup point guard, Zeke Naji as the backup 4, Peyton Watson being a consistent player off the bench, man, wouldn't have worked out any better. But we haven't gotten a chance to see that because of Michael Malone's attitude towards the whole thing. And I thought there was some moments within that Sacramento game the other night where David Adelman just decided, I'm going to play the guy who's performing better. He played both Westbrook and Jalen Pickett, and then as the game wore on, Jalen Pickett had one of his best games ever, and Russell Westbrook continued his decline, and David Adelman said, I'm going with Jalen Pickett. And that's all anybody asks. Don't just play Westbrook to be stubborn and because you hate playing young players. If he's performing at a higher level than Jalen Pickett, then fine, play Russell Westbrook. But don't have it in your mind that you're not giving Jalen Pickett a chance, and even though Russell Westbrook is performing like he has over the last week, you're still going to ride with him. So it'll be interesting tonight. You know, the Nuggets were pretty much in control most of that Sacramento game. I think tonight's going to be a little bit more nip and tuck in the balance. Who does David Adelman call upon? I think this Westbrook Jalen Pickett thing has become a microcosm of the Nuggets' strife. So if Jalen Pickett continues to get minutes, continues to perform, then I think you do have to look at it and say if Michael Malone was a little bit more willing to bend, maybe we would have seen this Jalen Pickett earlier. But I think that ultimately that's the frustration that you have to have if you're a Nuggets fan, more than anything else, is just that these two people could not coexist to the point where we got to see truly what this Nuggets team is supposed to be. That's the frustrating part of it. And it might be too late. We may not be able to see much of anything at this point. But I just feel like this relationship or lack thereof between these two was so bad that we didn't really see what the Nuggets are supposed to be. We'll see if we see more of who they're supposed to be tonight. 7:00 right here on Extra Sports 1300. Take more of your texts after this. Dan Hurley's name has been floating around the internet as a potential next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. I say doesn't have the right temperament to take over this team, because you're basically, if you hire him from that standpoint, you are doubling down on Michael Malone's style of coaching. Players are going to be called out even more. Players are going to be ridden even more. And that's part of why Michael Malone's message started to fall on deaf ears, because he just kept on and calling him out and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously you have the best player in the world who will at least finish in the top two. There are only two other players in NBA history that have finished in the top two of MVP voting for 5 straight years. Oscar Robertson and Larry Bird are the only other two. And Nikola Jokic certainly is going to either beat Shea out for the MVP or is going to finish second. I don't think you want to leave the franchise in this vulnerable position in the hands of someone who's never done it before. I think Dan Hurley's, and I said this when he was supposedly interested in the Laker job, I actually thought he might be better for the Lakers post LeBron. But when you have one of the best players in the world, when you, right or wrong, you can believe that the Lakers should or have championship aspirations. But the fact of the matter is, when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, you do. And I didn't think it would be a good fit for either party. And I don't think this is the right job for Dan Hurley either, as far as what you're looking for in the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Jersey J says you need a millennial coach, not an old school coach for the Nuggets. Now, I want to be careful, because if you go that route, you're talking, people will think of like JJ Redick, right? The Nuggets finding their next JJ Redick. I don't think I think that's too risky. Because again, if Luka is the great, Josh Kroenke talked about, in effect, Nikola Jokic, masking some of their ills. Well, JJ Redick being handed Luka Doncic certainly changes the perspective on perhaps how good of a coach JJ Redick is. And I like some of the things that he's doing, but where was this Lakers team going? And what were we going to say about JJ Redick's first year in LA had Luka not arrived on their doorstep? I would want somebody with experience, but I'd also want somebody that has done it for long enough and has had the different experiences to read the room better. And I think that does come from experience. I don't think they have to bring in a younger coach. They don't have to bring in somebody that was just in the NBA because he gets it more. I think you can find somebody that has coached many years as been a head coach at the NBA level for many years, that just understands when to push his team and when not to. And understands that many of the players on the Denver Nuggets have been to the mountaintop. Like, they know what is required. So for you to keep pushing and pushing and pushing the way that Michael Malone did, it wears on you, and that's what happened. His style of coaching is better for. That's why I think these rumors of him maybe taking over for Greg Popovich in San Antonio, I think it's a great fit for him. I do. That is a very young team with Wemby and Castle. There's talent there. And I think Michael Malone has been able to get the most out of the talent, not so much lately with these younger guys, but you got to give him credit for Jamal Murray to an extent and for Nikola Jokic and Michael Porter. Like, I think he deserves some credit for that. In the end, once this team crossed the Rubicon and became a champion, then that's what it was all about. I can't concern myself with development of young talent. I got another championship to win because I stood up there or sat up there after we won against the Miami Heat and threw out the word dynasty. Michael Malone did himself no favors by saying that and then repeating it at the championship parade, understanding that there were some chemicals in his body at the time that probably lowered his inhibitions and he felt more free to speak his mind. But it still didn't do him any favors. As anything you say slightly under the influence of alcohol probably does you no good. So I think Michael Malone can go to a place like San Antonio and coach up those players. They probably need a little bit more stick than carrot at this point in their development. And I think he can get San Antonio to a really good place. I think San Antonio has, a foundation in place with Wemby and with Castle. I think they could be a problem in the Western Conference in the very near future. I think Michael Malone's perfect for that. But that's a team that's very young. That's a team on the rise. That's a team with very low expectations. That doesn't know any better. They don't know how to win in the NBA. Michael Malone can show them how. But the Nuggets are at this different stage where they need to maintain. They know what it takes to get there. They don't need to be pushed. Or at least pushed as much. So I think actually it goes to me saying they need somebody that has been a head coach at the NBA level because they, more than a first-year head coach, might be able to understand that. And that's something that Josh Kroenke is going to have to find out when he interviews these candidates. Whether it be Jeff Van Gundy or if Mike Budenholzer loses his job or Taylor Jenkins. Some of these names that are probably going to be somewhat linked to the Nuggets job. When he sits down with them, say, does this, I think I would want to hear from Josh Kroenke, a candidate for the head coaching job goes, I don't need to push these guys. These guys know what it takes. They know what they need to do to be ready for the playoffs or to win games. I at times I'll need to push, but other times I know that really the majority of the time I just need to keep the locker room peaceful, right? Manage egos. I mean, once the Bulls got the hang of the triangle offense, everything that Phil Jackson did was ego management. Right? A lot of strong personalities. A lot of people who wanted their shine, wanted their playing time, and he did a brilliant job of managing that. The Nuggets need a psychologist as much as they need, a guy scribbling on a whiteboard. So I don't want to look at it as young and old or new or retread. I just want somebody that understands the balance that has to be struck and where the Nuggets are at this point in their franchise, and knowing that what Michael Malone did kind of wore this team down. Continue to take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show. But before that, here is another round 2 Masters update from Westwood One. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on a Friday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Pleasure to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app for free to do your listening. And that app sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. Nuggets and Grizzlies on the slate tonight. Talk more about that game momentarily. Your thoughts, always welcome. 719-247-1313. You can call or text it in. Right now, it is time to fire up the three stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with story number one. Words that sent shivers down the spines of Western Conference teams.
I think they got. Josh get the response that he wanted. People say that we are vulnerable, but I think the beast is always the strongest or the most dangerous when they're vulnerable. So maybe he woke up the beast.
Oh boy. Nikola Jokic, who once had arguably the greatest postseason we have ever seen just a couple of years ago, intimating that perhaps the beast has been awakened. I don't know how much of a beast this Nuggets team is, but I know how much of a beast that guy is. I don't think at any point during all of this, as some in the national media might tell you, I don't think anybody in the West truly wants to play Nikola Jokic. I think they would much prefer somebody else dealing with that headache. But with him saying that, I really don't want to match up with Nikola Jokic, especially round one. Maybe if I'm Boston in the finals or OKC or Minnesota because of the track record, I don't love playing him, but I feel still pretty confident that at the end of the day, we'll be able to win. But waking up the beast, my goodness, Nikola Jokic, one of the hardest lines you will ever hear anybody say. But you have to think about who he mentions. He mentioned Josh Kroenke as bringing this on, not the haters, that nebulous thing that athletes like to point to, the haters. He's not talking about the haters. He's not talking about the national media. He's talking about Josh Kroenke. And I said it when they made the move to fire both Calvin Booth and Michael Malone, that the players would have to be living in a fantasy world to not look at themselves and say, we are a part of this. Sure, Calvin Booth and Michael Malone, that whole relationship and how toxic it become, that was the biggest problem. The roster wasn't as big of a problem, or the players weren't as big of a problem as those two were. But whenever a coach gets fired, and the timing of it and everything, you have to, as a player, realize that in some way, this is an admission of, I don't think it's going to happen for us this year. Even though Josh Kroenke is going to say all the right things, and maybe most of him believes that simply removing that toxicity is going to open up the Nuggets to a deep playoff run, some part of him has to know. I mean, Josh Kroenke, you could say what you want about him in terms of his soccer knowledge, his hockey acumen. The guy is a pretty smart basketball guy. He understands that sport. And you don't make a move like this without some doubt that the team is capable of winning a title. And that's what I think Nikola Jokic was referring to. That in some way, our own owner thinks that we're not perhaps capable of winning a title. So he's got to make a move for the future like this. I think Nikola Jokic is quite perceptive. But you got a glimpse of this in the Sacramento game. I think you'll see more of it in the Grizzlies game tonight. With Malone and Booth out of the mix, this is very much, this run, whatever it's going to be, is going to be player-led. And you saw it, right? Nikola Jokic scribbling on the whiteboard during the timeout. Christian Brown, after the Kings game, said that the communication was better than it ever had been this season because far too often they looked to Michael Malone to tell them what to do. They're taking more ownership of this. I think from here on out, you can say that this is on the players because the next step, once this season is over, whenever it comes to an end, we're going to look at the roster now. More so than we ever have before because we don't have to ask the question of whether they need a new GM or whether they need a head coach. Those are already been answered. It's going to be, all right, now let's look at the roster. Let's look at these players. Are they good enough? Is Christian Brown truly what the Nuggets have said he could be after losing KCP? Are these younger players now without Michael Malone refusing to play them? Are they capable of stepping up? But I think all this moving forward, David Adelman is going to be a facilitator. He's going to be kind of the oil for the wheel, the lubrication. He's taking a step back. He's letting the players take most of this on themselves. And that's what Nikola Jokic is, you could clearly see during the game. These players are taking more ownership, as they should. Because what's going on is a failure on their part as well. Now, story number 2 is that while the other night against Sacramento was all well and good, this is the one they got to get tonight. Because the Nuggets beating Sacramento really didn't keep them out of danger with the danger being the play-in. They come into play tonight still in a virtual tie for 4th with the Clippers and the Grizzlies. And. I misspoke, the Nuggets did stay above them, but a loss would cause all these teams to potentially jump over them. Other games tonight that you want to keep an eye on the scoreboard for, and I'm not saying this to give you the utmost confidence, I'm just stating which games are also important to look out for. Minnesota is hosting Brooklyn. Clippers are at Sacramento. Golden State is in Portland. Kind of looks like a night for Minnesota, the Clippers, and Golden State all to win, no? Doesn't mean they all will, but I believe they are all favored to win tonight. And then you have Memphis that obviously doesn't have to rely on anybody. They can just beat the Nuggets and jump them in the standings. And we'll reshuffle the deck going after tonight, going into Saturday and Sunday. But for now, it's if you win, you stay in fourth, and you're going into the last game of the season against a Houston team that has nothing to play for. Instead of you lose to Memphis, now not only do you need the Houston game, but you need help. So the Nuggets after tonight could be in fourth, they could be in eighth. And that's job one for the Denver Nuggets. Stay out of that play-in. And then we'll worry about the playoffs. Got to win tonight. Perhaps help is on the way. Jamal Murray has been upgraded to questionable for tonight. So we shall see. I mean, the consequence of the Memphis game is so large that it's hard to look past it. But the fact that he's getting better could be a positive sign going into the playoffs. But if they can get him on the court for some minutes in a game like this, it very much feels like almost a play-in to avoid the play-in. And a little bit of Jamal Murray, that helps. So we'll see after warm-ups whether Jamal Murray is good to go for tonight. But Nuggets and Grizzlies coming up at 7 o'clock here on Extra Sports 1300. However, your attention may be a little bit split because also at 7 o'clock, Gabriel Landeskog will play his first professional hockey game in over 1,000 days. He will indeed play tonight for the Colorado Eagles in Loveland. And this is the last hurdle for him to clear before he rejoins the Avalanche and the comeback is truly complete. And he steps out on the ice for potentially game one against the Stars. That game is available tonight on Flow Hockey's YouTube page and the AHL Facebook page. Demand for an AHL game, I can say without hesitation, never been higher for people to watch it or to go to it. Get this. Tickets right now to this game are going for $600 a piece. So getting away from the newsworthiness of it and Gabriel Landeskog playing in a professional hockey game and how does he look and what happens when somebody checks him into the boards, although I would be very careful. I'd be very careful. You want to be the guy that unloads on Gabriel Landeskog and gets him hurt? Ooh. Your future in the NHL would be non-existent. But you can't not hit him. Right? I mean, it's professional hockey. You're getting paid to play this game. So the first time that Gabriel Landeskog gets hit, the first time he delivers a hit, all of that we're going to be watching. But if I can move away from the consequence of it all, $600? I wouldn't presume to tell anyone what to do with their money. How much could Avs playoffs tickets cost? Like, if you don't already have your tickets at the normal face value, and you're going to buy into this game for $600, and you are not a wealthy individual, I would have serious questions. Because as important as this game is, as significant as it is, Game 3 at Ball Arena against the Dallas Stars is going to be an even bigger deal. So I'll put it that way. If you don't have another $600 that you could spend to get in the door for game 3 of their first round series, why are you buying this one? Again, not my money. I shouldn't tell people how to spend it. That's crazy. That's crazy. And actually, this also brings up a question that I pose from time to time. If you are an Eagles season ticket holder and you have these tickets, you selling? You're never, ever. And how much could the Eagles season tickets cost? You might be able to pay for multiple seasons. I have no idea. I don't know how much they cost. This is a windfall that you will never have a chance at again. If you have your family of 4 has season tickets to the Eagles and they're going for $600 a pop, do the math. Do you sell or do you say, this is the most important game that I will ever go to as long as I have these season tickets? I want to be in the building. And we could say the purest answer is, oh, you go. But I think I wouldn't chastise anyone who has been investing in Colorado Eagles tickets for this season or for multiple seasons that would want to go, yeah, I think I'll sell. And then I can take my family to go watch Gabriel Landeskog at Ball Arena in the NHL playoffs. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show and the question. You have Eagles tickets. I know people that have Eagles tickets for tonight's game. Would you sell at $600 a pop? Take your thoughts on that. And a familiar face is back in Cleveland. Does that mean that truly the Browns are out of the Shedeur Sanders business? Welcome back to Cleveland. Joe Flacco, now 40-year-old quarterback, signing with the Cleveland Browns. Of course, he helped Cleveland make the playoffs a couple of years ago and already becomes the most viable option at quarterback on the roster ahead of Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson. But does that mean that they're not going to take a quarterback at 2, notably Shedeur Sanders, because either the Titans are really playing us or they have already decided they're taking Cam Ward? Part of me thinks the Browns are loving the idea that the draft starts with them. I think they love the idea. One, I think they like Cam Ward, I'm sure. But I think they love the idea of we can get Abdul Carter, we can get Travis Hunter, we can get Shedeur Sanders. I think that the Browns, this close to the NFL draft, are squeezing every moment out of being the belle of the ball. No one talking about Tennessee anymore. They're taking Cam. Moving on. Draft starts at 2. It's a fun spot to be in. Probably getting a lot of phone calls. Teams wanting to move up. A lot of media attention. People asking, who you taking? Who you taking? I think the Browns are loving this. And I think what NFL teams love to do this time of year is to throw up smoke screens. The more I think about it, the more I just think Shedeur makes so much sense in Cleveland. I do. And I mean, Travis Hunter would be very difficult to pass up. Abdul Carter, it just feels like a luxury that the Cleveland Browns shouldn't get at this point. Like, they got other places to look. So I think I wouldn't be totally shocked if it was Travis Hunter. If it's Abdul Carter, I would be pretty surprised. I would. And I don't think that they've ruled out drafting Shedeur. I think right now they are just leaking out all of these reports or enjoying all of these reports going around that they're going to take Hunter. No, they're going to take Carter. And we don't love Shedeur that much. I see a lot of that coming out of Cleveland. A lot of people in Cleveland, not with the team, but like on sports talk radio going, yeah, you know what? Maybe they could trade back into the first round. Got to take somebody else at 2. I don't think Cleveland has made up their mind. And I don't think they have ruled out Shedeur Sanders. Even bringing in Joe Flacco, I don't think means that Shedeur Sanders is out. Might they not draft him? Sure. But I feel like this is a bunch of billowing smoke, and it's at the heart of it, it just makes too much sense. Unless they are really that down on Shedeur Sanders, I don't see how he's not the pick. And maybe it's not even Cleveland. Maybe this is New York doing this. You know, because a conversation is centered around one team doesn't mean that's where the intel is coming from. Right? The intel that these reporters are getting could be from a team 3 spots back. I mean, that's why things get so silly before the draft even starts, is that you don't know where this information is coming from. Sources tell me the Browns want to draft Abdul Carter. Are your sources in Cleveland? Well, they're my sources. Can't tell you my sources. I have heard that Cleveland likes this person. Who told you Cleveland likes this person? Did Cleveland tell you this? My sources. Can't divulge my sources. All I'm saying is don't be shocked if quarterbacks go 1-2. Don't be shocked. We've talked a lot about all of these guys. We've circled back around. We've loved them. We've hated them. We're back to loving on some of them, back to hating on some of them. It's a whole industry that needs to be supported here. And what's good for that industry is that Shedeur Sanders, a brand name that gets clicks and garners interest, is all of a sudden free falling. I don't know. I don't know about that. And I've said, Travis Hunter, just because of how special he is, he's not even the best player in this draft. He's a unique player that has never come around before. So I can understand that even teams with a need at quarterback go, yeah, we need a quarterback, but this guy, look at this unicorn over here. I get that for Cleveland. I get that for Tennessee. I get it for the Giants and every team thereafter. But you have a team already with Myles Garrett. And you're going to draft another edge rusher with the second overall pick. Nah, I don't know. I don't know about that. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Jersey Jay says, Ryan, I need Shedeur drafted by either the Raiders or the Cowboys. Imagine the amount of jerseys I'd sell around here because we know the Broncos aren't going to be involved. Yeah, a Sanders, Cowboys, or Steelers jersey would sell like hotcakes. But I'll say this about Shedeur, whether I'm right or I'm wrong about the Browns throwing out all sorts of smoke screens. If Shedeur does fall, let's play that game. It's not the worst thing in the world for him. It's not. And I know Shedeur has the utmost confidence and he's going to step into every place he goes and believes he can turn them around. But we talk about it every year with, we love these quarterbacks. And then they're drafted and we go, ugh. Right? Because the realization sets in of, oh, now it begins. It's before it's, well, the Titans should draft Cam Ward. Right? They need a quarterback. Many people believe Cam Ward's the best quarterback in the draft. You got to take him. Browns, you got to take Shedeur. You don't have a quarterback. And we say all these things, and then once they're drafted, okay, that part of it is done. They drafted the guy that we thought they should draft for all of these reasons. But now the reality sets in of now you got to develop this guy. And some of these teams that are now reportedly not interested in Shedeur are actually probably teams that he would be best to avoid. What's funny about all this is his floor or his new floor is Pittsburgh. And that's actually not a good place for him to land either because the Steelers have not done a great job at quarterback. Now, would I trust Pittsburgh a little bit more than, some of these other teams? Sure. But I don't know that the Steelers are a team that has had a great track record. They just had Kenny Pickett. Didn't do very well. I don't know if there's a perfect fit, honestly, for Shedeur. Now Derek Carr has got this shoulder thing. And maybe the desperation level for New Orleans goes up to take a Shedeur. I mean, that you saw it. They played the Broncos this year. That team is trash. That team is trash. And I believe in Shedeur Sanders, but not a lot of winning going on in New Orleans. Not a lot of people on that roster that you look at and go, there's someone to build around. Kamara's about it. I don't know if there's a great place. Maybe Pittsburgh is the best play. I mean, Dallas. I mean, I know we don't love Dak Prescott and we know they have their own issues, but I mean, Shedeur goes to Dallas, you'd feel better about his future than if he went to the Giants. No, we'll see. I just think everything going on right now, I feel like there's a lot of filler to get us to 2 weeks from now. And then what usually happens is we get a bunch of nonsense right now. And then the week of the draft, then things start to crystallize a little bit. Like teams are playing fewer games now. They're bunkered down in their war rooms. They're not really interested in sabotaging or floating rumors or all that kind of stuff. They're a little bit more focused, getting their last minute prep in. And then we start to like truly get a sense of how this thing is going to play out. I think the wildest rumors and theories and stuff come out in these last couple of weeks just to push everybody across the finish line. We'll see. I mean, if people are really buying in to Shedeur Sanders falling to the 20s, then I will gladly proclaim that Shedeur Sanders is going to be gone before that. 719-247-1313, back after this. Jamal Murray is a go for tonight. David Adelman has spoken, and Jamal Murray will play tonight for the Denver Nuggets in a game that they really, really, really need to win. And of course, I would expect that he doesn't play the whole game and he's limited. But again, I think there's a few good things that comes out of this. One is that Jamal Murray's a really good player and he will help you beat the Memphis Grizzlies. That's probably the most important thing. Two, this means that Jamal Murray is getting healthier here a week before the playoffs begin, or 3 or 4 days, depending on where the Nuggets end up in the standings. So that's important. And then if he could play, I don't know what the magic number of minutes is, but if he could give you a certain amount of minutes, you could play Jalen Pickett as his backup, and you could play less Russell Westbrook. So a lot of positives out of Jamal Murray playing in tonight's game. The third one is certainly far less important than the other two. But they got a win tonight, and they're not getting anywhere in the postseason without him. Just aren't. There's too many good, and it could be Clippers, Golden State, Minnesota, OKC, you name it. Without Jamal Murray, I don't think they're getting out of the first round. So perhaps the most important thing is that he's getting healthier. That game will tip off at 7 o'clock tonight. Let's see. Brett says Jamal Murray is not an excellent player. He's an average player because at times he is awesome and at times he sucks. And if he doesn't want to play, he does not play. That makes an average of average. I get what you're getting at. And look, nobody has spent more time discussing the flaws of depending on Jamal Murray more than me. But I think we could say that he is above average when he's on the court. He is inconsistent because his top level is really high. And when you compare it to his form during the regular season, yeah, it's a pretty big drop-off. But if you just took Jamal Murray during the regular season, 20, 22 points a game, that's above average, I would say. But I get your point. And that's why I say that I think you really need to think long and hard about Jamal Murray being the piece that you move to try and reconfigure this team moving forward. But something to just keep in mind, it doesn't mean that trading Jamal Murray is impossible. But saw this on pointed out on Bomani Jones's podcast. We don't talk about the power of the agent as much as probably we should. There are some extreme examples, right? Like Rich Paul. and how Rich Paul runs the Lakers, the New York Knicks and Leon Rose, right? Those relationships. But agents have a lot of power because players have a lot of power and who the agents act on behalf of. This was pointed out. I had no reason to look this up. So thanks to Bomani Jones's podcast, Jeff Schwartz is the agent for Jamal Murray. He is also the agent for Nikola Jokic. Keep that in mind in this somewhat fragile state that the Denver Nuggets are in right now. Jeff Schwartz represents the Nuggets' two most important players. And if the Denver Nuggets are thinking, whoever takes over as GM is thinking about sending Jamal Murray to Toronto or Chicago or just shipping him somewhere that Jamal Murray may not love to go, that the same guy that represents him represents Jokic. That means something. Also notable, upon further research, Jeff Schwartz does not represent Michael Porter. Nor does he represent Aaron Gordon. Just something to keep in mind if the Denver Nuggets are really going to contemplate some changes to that core four. Jamal Murray, through his agency, is tied to Nikola Jokic. And Nikola Jokic is eligible, and this was pointed out by ESPN in their piece about the whole Michael Malone, Calvin Booth thing. Nikola Jokic is able to sign an extension this summer. And while they're trying to get that deal done, if they're also trying to move Jamal Murray to a place that Jamal Murray would not like to be, could have an effect on things. I'm not saying that this means that they won't touch Jamal Murray. And look, Josh Kroenke may not, let's not underestimate the power that Josh Kroenke has in all of this. Or, I mean, he always has the power, but how much he is going to have a say over things. The Kroenkes have been very much hire smart people, get out of their way, right? The Kroenkes have kind of faded into the background a little bit over the years. But in this moment, this is a big moment for the Nuggets franchise. Josh Kroenke is going to want to be very influential in this. And he will be able to because he's going to be picking the GM, certainly, and at least having a say in who becomes the head coach. So if the new GM comes in and says, I think the best path forward is for us to trade Jamal Murray, and Josh Kroenke doesn't want it to happen, and that's what I think is going to be very interesting about this offseason, especially if the Nuggets don't end up getting like a Bob Myers, right? You get a Bob Myers, you are just saying it's your show, right? The guy has built a dynasty in Golden State, right? If you're giving him the keys, but if it's an assistant GM somewhere, if it's somebody within the Nuggets organization, like Calvin Booth's assistant, think Josh Kroenke is just going to flip him the keys and say, you do whatever you want? So I think we're going to find out this offseason where Josh Kroenke is on this roster. And whether do the Nuggets lean more into the young players and kind of stand pat a little bit? Do they look for a significant shakeup to their core four? Do they try to work around the edges with veteran players? I think a lot of this, again, unless it's Bob Myers, I think you could reasonably say that any other GM that comes in is going to have Josh Kroenke right over his shoulder. I think he wants to be a part of this offseason. And who stays and who goes, and whether this is an offseason of significant change or not much change, I think can be directly attributed to Josh Kroenke in a way it has not been perhaps over the last many years. But all that's in the future. Tonight it's about Memphis because the Nuggets need to win this game. They will have Jamal Murray to some extent. The Colorado Eagles will have Gabriel Landeskog to some extent, shaping up to be a very fun night of sports, leading into a fun weekend of sports, which will hopefully lead into a fun day of sports talk on Monday. So appreciate your patronage, appreciate your interaction. It's been a great week, right? Crazy week. Big week in Colorado sports, and I appreciate you elevating the show by giving your take on everything that has happened with the Denver Nuggets. And we'll reconvene on Monday, and guess what? It'll be playoff time. Play-in time for the Nuggets? Maybe. Playoff time for the Avs? Things are getting really good. Enjoy your weekend. Don't forget Nuggets Grizzlies tonight at 7 o'clock here on Extra Sports 1300.